Hi guys, I'm back again with another review. Today I'm reviewing the James Gunn Suicide Squad film, simply called The Suicide Squad, um, which is a sort of sequel to the original Suicide Squad from 2016 that was directed by David Ayer. So I'm just going to give my full, completely spoiler-filled thoughts on it. It's a difficult one to talk about without going into spoilers. I'll sum it up quickly without, and then I'll go into more detail with. So, overall, and a quick summary of what I thought about it. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was absolutely fantastic film. Very bold, very, yeah, very interesting, extremely violent, extremely different. That's the main thing, is it's so different for a comic book film. It's like no comic book film you've ever seen has really been quite like this one. It's like I say, it's more than anything, it's bold, it's ballsy, it's James Gunn. It's James Gunn's style, it's James Gunn's humour, it's everything is completely his style, unfiltered, kind of no holds barred, no holding back. And there's something really great about seeing that. There are some negatives to it, which I'll get into with spoilers, but overall, I'd say this was a really fantastic DC film, or just film in general. And I'd probably say it's a 9 out of 10 for me. It's very, very well done. Beautiful looking film as well. The visual effects were great. There was an awful lot of stunt work, an awful lot of practical stuff done, and a lot of real actors, and huge cast as well. The cast was massive. The scale of this thing was ridiculous. It was so epic. It was like an epic war film in a way, but with a Suicide Squad flavour to it. Characters were great. The script was really funny in general. There was a couple of bits that didn't work, but most of it was really, really good. Very smartly written. And it's difficult these days to come up with a superhero film that's not predictable to some extent, because there's so many of them, and there's such a tried and tested formula for them. And this felt really refreshing. Like, it had quite a lot of twists and turns and things that I didn't see coming, and that I didn't expect were going to happen. So again, it's best to watch this one, without anyone spoiling anything for it. So just to wrap up my really quick review for it here, I'd say that it's a really good film. It's 9 out of 10. I will say, with a caveat though, it's quite a niche type of a film. If you're easily offended by excessive violence, uh, excessive cruelty, and just sort of weird, bizarre, and quite dark humour, you will not probably like it. It's not a mainstream film. It's not a film by any means that's for everybody. But if you like James Gunn's films, you like his other films, and the sort of style that he has, this is everything you could wish for in his version of Suicide Squad. It's very purely what you want out of a James Gunn film. Now, that may not be to everyone's taste, as I said, so there is that caveat on it. It's not a film that's for everyone, but for the people who like his films and like that style, or even like excessively violent, ridiculous, over the top sort of films, you're probably gonna like it. But yeah, so that's the non-spoiler bit out of the way. So now I'll talk about it in spoilers. A bit of background to it as well. I like to do a little preamble where I sort of go over what I thought about it leading up to it, and what I thought about it, watching it and after it. So leading into this, I'm one of the few people that really actually did like the original Suicide Squad. I thought it had quite a lot of issues, but there was something about it I liked. I liked the characters. I liked the kind of setup of it. But as I now know, that version of Suicide Squad was completely ripped apart and destroyed by the studio, Warner Brothers. So it's an unfair comparison, I think, between this Suicide Squad and that one, because that one was like a mangled mess. And considering it's a mangled mess, I still found some enjoyment in it. But it is, editing wise, pacing wise, story wise, It's a complete mess, that film. As much as I love it, and I love the performances in it, I love some of the ideas in it and some of the scenes in it. As a film, it's a mess. So um, I would love to see the David Ayer's original version before it got screwed with his original really dark version of it. So yeah, that's going off it a bit. But basically, I like the original Suicide Squad when I first watched it. Um, Again, it wasn't as perfect as I would like it to be. There were quite a lot of issues with it, but I still enjoyed it. I liked it. And then when I heard that James Gunn was getting to follow up, I was really, really excited because I love the first Guardians and the second Guardians. Actually, I think his input into the Marvel is some of the best we've seen from Marvel because of his unique take that he's able to sort of bring to it. He just makes things a bit more fresher, a bit more. He's interested in changing up. He's not interested in always doing the same thing over and over. So I like that he brings that to the MCU. He brings a bit of unpredictability, a bit of humour, a bit of heart to his films. And so, yeah, I was super excited to hear he was going to be doing the next Suicide Squad. I still would have preferred it if he just called it Suicide Squad 2. It's a minor nitpick, but I find it's a little sort of insulting to the first one. But you've got one film called Suicide Squad. This one's called The Suicide Squad, as if the first one wasn't a real film. And weirdly enough, it does acknowledge the first one's existence. So it's a really weird title. I don't know if that's something that Warner Brothers did as a marketing move, in the same way as they came up with that weird title for Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. Like, they just decided that it was going to be called this rather than just call it Suicide Squad 2, because that's what it is. But yeah, so I was a little miffed by that because it felt like he was just sort of riding roughshod and just being like, oh, I'm going to do whatever I want. And some of the trailers towards the end did give me cause for concern. Like the last trailer that came out for it, I felt from what I saw in the trailer, I started to get cold feet with it. I was like, it looks like this could be a really shit film, actually. I was like, it could be just excessively gory and loads of things where the jokes don't land and just a really pointlessly violent and pointlessly just like Michael Bay does sometimes. He just makes excessively gory, pointless OTT jokes for no reason, and there's no point to it. So I felt like that's what it was going to be. I also felt it was going to be sort of a heartless film. I was really worried about it not having any kind of heart to it, just being extremely cynical. And some of those issues or some of those things, I think, there is grounds for saying in some ways it is a bit cynical with some of the deaths, with some of the way certain things are handled. I certainly felt that, like, the way the first one was handled in terms of the tone of it and the sort of seriousness of it, I kind of preferred that. Like, again, because the film was a butchered mess, bits of it aren't true to that tone, bits of it are serious tone, bits of it are silly, and it just, like I say, it's just a mess of a film, the first one. But there was something in the fact that it felt like it took the violence of it a bit more serious than this one. This one's extremely flippant. It's extremely flippant with its characters, and it kind of maneuvers characters and gets characters to do stupid things that kind of don't make sense at certain times, just to give them a gory death or have some explosive violence. So to some extent, there is a cynicism to some of it. Some of it is a little bit like what I've said. It is just violence for violence's sake. Some of it is a bit needless, you could say. But I think overall, what it does right is it goes so far above and beyond what you'd expect of a film like this. But I can forgive it for some of it not quite working, because again, like, if you want a fully comprehensive, like, no holds barred vision from a director, which is what I like to see. I like to see exactly what the director's vision is. You always have some negatives that go with that as well, because if it's a personal film, I always think personal films that directors make reflect on their personality, and whether you're talking about Stanley Kubrick, who had films that were populated with characters that not only, very unlikable characters, whether you're talking about Spielberg that tended towards be quite sentimental, whether you're talking about Tim Burton where he tends to make a similar film over and over again. There's all the sort of auto directors, when they're making personal films, there's an aspect of it that's negative. There's an aspect of it that you kind of have to take the good with the bad and know that if you're watching a Spielberg film, it's probably going to have, or it may have, some sentimental crap in it at a certain point. It's a bit too much. And the same thing with Kubrick. Watching a Kubrick film, you know that there's going to be a lot of characters and the dialogue's not going to be very naturalistic, and the characters you may not really care for Uh, and again, the same thing with something like Zack Snyder. I know watching Zack Snyder films, some of the dialogue's going to be a bit cringy. There's going to be an overuse of slow motion. Like whatever director you're talking about, you're always going to find something that's a problem because it's a version of them, you know. Every single good director I can think of, there is some negative that goes with watching a film of theirs, and it's kind of like, to me, it's like an evening out. So it's like I'm happy to accept a bit of some negative because I know that overall what I'm getting is the true director's vision of what they want to put on screen. Shyamalan's, I'm not Shyamalan the same. Like I'm willing to accept a certain amount of sort of ridiculous dialogue and kind of, you know, certain bits of it's on the nose and a bit up its own arse because the rest of it is good. So anyway, so that's my feeling with this. Is like my misgivings or issues with it are just what I would have in any James Gunn film, because James Gunn's a human like everyone else, and when he makes a film that's just purely him, it's like you get the good and the bad. So you get sometimes over excessive use of violence. Sometimes it's like I said, it is violence for violence sake and it's needless. And some of the deaths do feel very like the character been created just to get killed straight away. And it was a little bit like, well, I get that that's the joke, but also another way, it's a little bit flippant, and an awful lot of people get killed in this film, like a lot and a lot of people. So I can certainly understand it being too much for some people, and I do think that maybe, you know, if Warner Brothers wanted this to be commercially successful, they should have reined him in a little bit. But I'm happy with what we did. You know, I'm amazed that Warner Brothers didn't do anything with it, because they usually, like with the first Suicide Squad, they sort of went in there and mucked about with it and changed it and ruined it. Well, it's good that they haven't done that with this. I mean, this is a much more coherent, much more impressive visual. I mean, it's visually a beautiful film, and it's very carefully made. You know, it's very carefully specific. All sorts of amazing shots and interesting things. So it's not something that's just been slapped together carelessly. You know, like I think it's a very intentional film, and I think that the problem with the first one was, again, it wasn't, because of all the sort of messing around with it. It felt like a very sloppy vision that you weren't really getting the proper full force of what it was trying to do. It felt very mixed messages and weird in different places and different tones and different colours to the scenes. Um, but yeah, I mean, the positives, like I say, far outweigh the negatives. And the issue I had with it not having a heart, I was worried about it sort of being a sort of heartless film, was thankfully not the case, because there was one character. Full enough, it was a female character called Ratcatcher 2, which is a weird name for a character. And one of the great things about this was, one of the great strengths of it was that it it gave you a sense of stakes that most superhero films don't, because most of the time you're dealing with huge IPs, huge characters like Batman, Spider-Man. You know that Batman's not going to get killed in a Batman film, or Spider-Man's never going to get killed in a Spider-Man film. And even a film like Avengers Endgame or Infinity War, where a lot of main characters get killed, they get brought back later. But because those characters are simply too big to kill off. But in the case of the Suicide Squad, one of the greatest things it had going for it was that it was a cast of almost complete unknowns, apart from Harley Quinn and Rick Flag. But even there, no one was safe in this film, and I think that was one of the best things it had going for it. So the many, many deaths of many of the characters, even early on, it's a bit like what happens quite often in Tarantino films. Some of the time you think, oh, did you really come off right then? Because you didn't really get to know the characters before they died. But it does create a sort of an atmosphere in the film that's quite tense, because you do realise anyone could die at any moment. It is very much the Suicide Squad, and he's fully embracing what that means, which means that, three-quarters of them don't make it out. I mean, I'm going in spoilers now, so I can say I was shocked that Rick Flag did get killed. I did honestly think he was a safe character, because he'd already been established in the previous one, and no, he's not a huge character in DC, but he seemed to me to be the sort of character you keep around. But no, he went. Um, you know, I was pretty certain Harley Quinn was safe, but I was still a little like, well, maybe, because I did hear rumours that Margot Robbie wasn't coming back to be Harley Quinn for a while, so I was like, well, maybe she does get killed off, and it's been a big secret. But no, she was safe. But it, that was the cool thing about it. Like, And a lot of the characters, these minor ones that you've never heard of before, like Ratcatcher 2, Polka Dot Man, they really were good. Like, they were good characters. It wasn't just it was a ridiculous idea at first. And again, the film was fully aware of its own ridiculousness and leaned right into it. It really went for it. That's the best thing I can say for it. It wasn't half-hearted in what it was trying to do. It wasn't kind of just doing a little bit and then just going, oh no, we won't fully commit to this idea, which is often what happens with Marvel films. Like, they dip their toe in the water of something interesting, but then they just never fully commit. They just go, they backtrack from it, or they don't go into it, and then they just go, look, like, let's just forget that. Let's just do the thing that we know that everyone likes. And that's probably the same reason why this won't be commercially successful, because it does go to some dark places. It does go to some extremes. It isn't comfortable feeling for some people. Some of it is very shocking. So, if you're not comfortable in watching a close-up shot of someone's face literally getting blown off, this is the kind of film that's going to create a lot of problems for you, because it happens many times in the film. It's not just once. It should have been an 18, definitely. Back in the day, this would have been an 18, no question about it. But they must have done some wrangling that got it a 15. But yeah, back to what I was saying about the heart of it. The heart of it really is these minor characters that you don't know before, but you're discovering in this film. And while I say a lot of them get killed off, the girl who, I don't know the name of the actress, or who played the Ratcatcher girl, she was really, really good. And she was a really, really likable character. And she was the heart of the film. And that was a smart decision, because that actress was fantastic and she was really, really good. Now, there's a couple of things, like I say, that stop this film from being a 10. It's not on the level of anything like the Dark Knight trilogy or even Man of Steel for me, but I would say, some of the negatives were surrounding John Cena. And it's a shame, because from what I saw in the trailer, I thought I was going to love him as Peacemaker, and I thought it was going to be really good. And my partner said it best, which is like, the character was good. The character Peacemaker was actually an interesting character, but John Cena's portrayal of the character wasn't good. And I think that's the best way to say it. It's like, there's a good character there, but he should not be the person bringing that character to life. Like, who it would be, I don't know. But he's not a good enough actor. He's not someone like Batista. Like Dave Batista, obviously he couldn't do that character because it's too similar to what he's done before. But Dave Batista actually, especially after seeing An Army of the Dead, he's a really good actor. And he's able to do sort of silly, dumb stuff, but he's just got a better comic timing. He's just got something about how Batista did it with Drax Destroyer, for example, in Guardians, that's just better than how John Cena does it. And I know he's not being sloppy with it. He's trying his best, but I just don't think he works with that character. And he was in it too much. Like, it felt like there was a lot of Peacemaker in it, and after a while it did get a bit much. I was a bit like, yeah, I get it. He's this dumb guy who believes in patriotism and stuff like that, but he was in it a lot, and he had a lot of lines, and yeah, most of them were funny. But after a bit, I was like, it did bat you over the head with that character a bit too much. I would have been happy to have him in like half the time he was in, just as a little tiny background character. I find it bizarre, and another one of these stupid decisions of WBs, again, because I'm always scratching my head as to where these decisions get made, that they decide not to do a Ben Affleck solo Batman HBO series, which is what everybody wants to see. Ben Affleck back as Batman for an HBO series, taking down Deadshot, whatever that was going to be. That instead, they decided to greenlight a Peacemaker TV show before the film even came out, before even knowing if that character was going to be popular with fans or anything. They were just like, oh, Peacemaker TV show. And I think it's a huge mistake making a Peacemaker TV show. I think, like, any of the other characters in the Suicide Squad film, you could have made a better TV show out of, like Bloodsport, the Ratcatcher girl. Like I said, if they made a TV show about her, that would have been really flipping cool. Even Rick Flag, if they killed off, would have been better. Just making a TV show out of Peacemaker, I don't see it being a big hit, especially because the film itself wasn't a big hit. But I think out of the people who watched it, there's not a lot of people at the end clamouring for more Peacemaker. I don't think. I mean, I certainly wasn't. The end credit scene where he brought him back alive, I was just like rolling my eyes because again they had him kill Rick Flag, and that's a big problem for me. Like if you kill a character I really like, and actually Joel Kinnaman as Rick Flag was way better in this than he was in the first Suicide Squad. I enjoyed him somewhat in that, but he was written more as an arsehole until the end when he sort of redeemed himself a bit. Whereas with this, he was pretty likable all the way through, and again, he was given more comedy, more humour, and he worked really well with that, which I was quite surprised at because I never thought he was the sort of actor that could handle, did have good comedic timing. That's one reason I thought the film might have been shit, as I was like some of these actors like Idris Elba, Joel Kinnaman, I know they're good dramatic actors, but I don't see them cracking wise and it working. I see it being really forced and feel really unnatural. But actually, no, it didn't. Like Idris Elba again was. It just goes to show I should never bet against Idris Elba because I was worried that he was going to be shit. And some of the trailers, I was like, is he just phoning this in? Is he really? Because it seemed like they were just doing a copy and paste from what we did with Deadshot, which is like, oh, you have this guy who's a merc and his daughter is in trouble and he has to go and do it for his daughter. I was like, well, that's the exact same story as the first Suicide Squad. But, and while that was true, it was sort of true. And actually, I'll give the first Suicide Squad props to this one thing. The aspect of Deadshot and his daughter was done better than the aspect of Bloodsport and his daughter. I just think that it was more well done in that way. That's probably the only thing about it that was better done. But actual Idris Elba in the film as the character of Bloodsport, he was great. He was really, really likable. As usual, he's just fantastic in anything he's in. And he did get a fair amount to do, so that was good. He was sort of the lead, really. I would have loved it, like I say, a TV show based on him would have been fantastic, either set in the past or future with him, because it did hint at some interesting things in his past that they could have sort of done, but they didn't do. They decided to go on Peacemaker. And again, these decisions that Warner Brothers make, I really don't know why they make them, who makes them, but it seems like they don't want to do what the fans want. They just want to do what they want. And I mean, as much as I love this film, I was still scratching my head going, why did you give him so much freedom when all these other directors, you've, like, butchered their version? It's like what happened with David Ayer in the first one. This one, we've just gone complete free-for-all. And I do think, like, some of it was too much. Like, some of it was too much for mainstream audience to take, and somewhere should have, like, I think the version we got in the cinema would have been great as, like, an unrated, uncut version that you released on Blu-ray. But I think for a theatrical film, there was so much stuff in it that I think was going to be more than what people were thinking would be let in for. I still scratch my head thinking, why didn't they cut that? Or why didn't they say maybe don't show that or do that? It feels like they were so scared. They're so glad just to have him there. They didn't want to challenge him. They didn't want to say, they gave him complete creative control and didn't want to take anything away from him. The same thing with Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman 84. I love both of these films, but I think with both of them, not necessarily studio interference, because I don't agree with that, because studios don't have a clue how to make films, but some other creative voices who understand how films work, like producers and people around them, sort of suggesting maybe don't go quite this far with it, maybe reel it in. But like I say, the good thing about it is, on the flip side of that, you're getting his full-on undistorted vision without any studio interference, so that was good. I mean, overall, I'd much rather have that than have a studio mandated type factory made movie that just has no heart and soul. So there's that. Peter Capaldi was good in it. I'd heard he wasn't in it very much, so I was surprised how much screen time he had. He's a brilliant actor, so he's always going to be great. The bit he comes into, it almost felt like it could have been like a mini Doctor Who episode. Actually, the role and the character, I understand exactly why they cast him in that character now. But yeah, he was good. The CG was phenomenal for most of it as well. I was worried it was going to look a bit cheap, but it didn't. I will definitely say, as expensive this movie was, I think it was like $185 million. You can see where all that $185 million went. There's sometimes certain films where the budget is like the same, or a huge budget, and the film looks crap, and you watch it thinking, where's all this money gone? But with Suicide Squad, I really think, the visuals, the CG, the mass amounts of explosive and stunt work and practical effects, and just real people, like hundreds of real soldiers firing guns and stuff. And it was a mammoth, epic film, and I really did see where they spent the money. I can understand it costing as much as it did. I think it's insane they gave that much money to make this, but there's something cool about how insane it is. And it's never going to happen again. This is like the superior version of Apocalypse Now, where they were like, gave Francis Ford Coppola shitloads of money to make this Vietnam War film, and after that, they're like, oh, we're not doing that again. So there was a bit of an Apocalypse Now vibe to it, actually. I think there's something going on there with that. King Shark, well, he's never referred to as King Shark. He's called a different name in the film. He was good. Again, his character got a bit boring after a bit, but there were some funny moments. The bit where he made the little version of Peacemaker out of the dynamite, that had me laughing. The comedy was really good in it. Like I fully expected it to be gross, and it was what I came to expect from James Gunn. But it was smartly done. It was really smart. It was really funny, and some of it was some good twists and turns in it. I liked sort of the back and forth where they split the time up. In this, it did feel intentional. It didn't feel confusing like in the first Suicide Squad. The cutting back and forth between the Joker story and the Harley Quinn story, and then even the way the film starts, it just didn't feel organic, and it didn't feel like. Again, it just didn't feel like it was intended to be made like that, because it wasn't. This, when it was cutting forwards and backwards and flashback into certain things, or taking different points of view of characters, it was definitely what he designed it to be, and it flowed and worked brilliantly. That's it. It felt very like a cohesive, great film. I didn't feel like that quite at the start. I think the pre-credit bit, even though I liked it, I did get a few, like, this feels really rushed and really sort of like jumping straight into it without any. But then once I saw the whole scene and I realised what the whole thing was, and then the film proper started, it played out fine. So I think that was intentional and part of James Gunn wanting to make it feel like you're just getting straight into the action. That was the way he chose to do it. So yeah, having seen the whole film, I had no issue with that. Viola Davis was back again as Amanda Waller. It's good to have her back as a sort of the bridge from the first to the second. Like I say, I did like the fact that it was acknowledging the second one, the first one, only in a small way. But it's, it acts as if the first one has happened. It doesn't just erase it. Like, again, another weird thing where they didn't just call it Suicide Squad 2. But another weird thing, probably due to Warner Brothers and their silly decision making, where they don't have a clue what they're doing. But yeah, overall, performance is great. Like I say, the girl who played Ratcatcher 2, really good. I loved her story. I loved Taika Waititi's little tiny role in it. That was great. Another thing I wasn't expecting. Best thing I can say about it was just pleasantly surprising all the way through. Like, you couldn't predict exactly what was going to happen or when who was going to get killed. There were so many bits that, like I say, that felt fresh. Felt like a breath of fresh air. The same thing with Deadpool. Similar to when Deadpool came out, that was a very great film, because for the genres of comic book movies, it stopped things being so stale. There were some moments that were really funny, some moments that you didn't normally get. So I liked it for all those reasons. Like I say, it's not on the level of the very best sort of comic book films of all time. Though it's not. I don't think it's even as good as. It's not as good as Zack Snyder's Justice League for me. Or Man of Steel, or the Dark Knight trilogy Christopher Nolan did, but that is an extremely high bar, and I think this could have been. It just had a few things, like I said, a few bits where certain characters, and again, this was in the pre-credit bit, did really, really stupid things. That was literally like, you are just doing this so you can walk out there and get shot. Like, why? What else do you think was going to happen to you? So, yeah, it was a bit like, you've just created a character just so you can kill them, and then have the audience be like, oh, they've been killed. It's a little bit, like I say, a bit cynical in places with some of the kills. Some of them were really good. Some of them we did feel emotionally sad, especially with Rick Flag. I was really gutted. And also the movie kind of makes you hate Peacemaker. Like, this is what's odd why I decided to make a show, because going back to the Peacemaker thing is like, that's probably one of its negatives. Is can't definitely say he's in a film full of villains. He's cast as a villain. That's a bit silly because they're all villains, but he definitely is placed in a way in the film where you're not encouraged to like him. Like the way that he kills off Rick Flag is pretty horrible. And then after that, when it was like the shootout between Bloodsport and him, again, another brilliant scene where it was very tense because I was like, I actually don't know who's going to get killed here. I was like, they could both get killed, maybe. I was on the side of Bloodsport. Like, I was happy that Bloodsport killed him, and to me, that was the right call to kill him off because he was a horrible guy. He was pretty much unredeemable. I mean, I don't know how you can redeem a character like that, make him the focus of a TV show. I'll be interested to see what we do with it, but I don't see he's the kind of character you can redeem because he's just a horrible, messed up, screwed up kind of character. Um, and to me, those kind of characters should be the ones that don't make it out. That's just and that seems to have been James Gunn's opinion, I think. Also, why would he not have just left him alive anyway? The end credit scene did feel very like studio mandated because he got shot in the neck, and it's like he clearly was dead, and all of a sudden, like, oh, he managed to survive, but he didn't. You saw him dead in the actual film, so things like that are a little weird. And like I say, apart from that, it's just the bad taste. There is some bad taste stuff in it, but it's a little needless, especially with like birds getting killed and stuff. It's like, we didn't need that. You didn't really need to do that. But again, that's what I mean. That's the aspect of you get a director's full vision. You're going to have things in there that you're like, not great, but overall, I got exactly what I wanted from it. And I still would like to see David Ayer's original vision for the first Suicide Squad because that was a bit more serious and it was a bit more in keeping with the rest of the DC stuff at the time. This is very much exists by itself on its own little island. Like, it's good because it's a standalone film. You don't really need to see the first one. Like I say, it links vaguely back to it, but you can just watch it. But I think that it's isolating, not because you don't need to see other things around it, but because of just how heavily James Gunn it is. If you're not into his films, you're really not going to like it. Or there's a good chance you won't like it, I should say. Because, again, it's audience expectation. Like, I think that this film would have done much better if they'd really just assembled the DC universe better. Because it's a fantastic, brilliant film, in my opinion, but a lot of people won't watch because it's not been. So even though I prefer DC over Marvel in terms of the films, Marvel did a much better job of getting all the fans on board and getting everyone on board, and then taking them and introducing them to weird, unusual characters, but beginning with, building those steps gradually and having it connected and getting the audience. I mean, that's one thing they did a really good job of over 10 years, getting that mainstream audience into those Marvel films, into some really weird, obscure properties like Guardians of the Galaxy, like Ant-Man, but they brought the audience with them, and they had the hardcore group of fans that were kind of there in the first Iron Man, and they always pleased those fans, and they were able to kind of like a ball, not a ball, like a snowball effect, then accumulate more and more fans, and more casual people liked it. Now with this, it's like the DC have sort of abandoned the hardcore fans and gone, well, we're not bothered about the hardcore fans. We want everybody. But then you make a film like this where it's like, this isn't for everybody though. Like, I love it, but this is a film for hardcore fans that you've rejected. You've rejected the hardcore fans that would actually have liked this film and would have raved about it, and still some people will. But a lot of the hardcore DC fans aren't going to watch this because they're pissed off with what happened with Zack Snyder and what happened with David Ayer. Like, if you released the Ayer cut, if you kept Zack Snyder on doing Justice League 2, Justice League 3 and the Ben Affleck thing, and then had this as another thing as well, and gone, drop the Ayer cut, at least announce it and go, it's going to come in, say, December of this year, but we want the James Gunn one out first. That would have been better, but again, they're just like, they don't know what product they've got, they don't know how to sell it, and so what they've done is James Gunn made an amazing film, won't reach a big audience because audiences aren't ready for it, audiences aren't primed for it, they're not We don't know who any of the characters are. Like, you know, I love it. From the outside looking in, I can understand a lot of people not loving it or not even wanting to even give it a chance. So it's constantly frustrating because DC, in my opinion, have better directors, have better films, have better characters, have better source material than Marvel. But they're never going to get the success because they're just the stupid decisions the people who own it are making. You know, it's not the brand, it's the people who own the brand making dumb decisions that just isn't meaning these films hit as hard as they should or do as well as they should. Like, this film should make a lot more money than it's making because A, releasing it day and date with HBO Max, another silly thing that it shouldn't have done. It should have been a cinema exclusive for a long time before it came to HBO Max, at least 2-3 months. Um, but yeah, that's another thing. So it's frustrating. I mean, same thing with Joker. You know, like that film was great, brilliant, but DC tried to enough bury it. Like they tried the best to make it not happen. So it's like they don't have a clue what is. They don't have a clue who their main audience is or what that main audience wants. That's the thing. Like the main audience they're sort of shunning for a mainstream audience that isn't interested in the thing they're trying to sell them. Like what what where is the mainstream interest in a Peacemaker TV series? Like no one knows who the character is, and if you even watch the film, like I say, not a lot of people will be favourable on that character. So I'm like, who is this stuff for? It's for the people who you've shut the door on and said we don't care about you. Really bizarre, really bizarre. I'll never understand why they don't want to make money, why they don't want to, um, you know, give the fans what they want, as well as doing their own thing, which is possible in a multiverse. You can easily have a Justice League 2 and 3 on an HBO Max service, and you can have your Suicide Squad and have your other Justice League or whatever else you want to do at the same time, and Shazam and everything else. I think the same fate will happen with Shazam. I think that it'll be a great film. I don't think anyone will watch it. Because even the first Shazam bombed and they gave it a sequel. And so this idea that, oh, Justice League 2 wouldn't do so well, it wouldn't necessarily have a fan base, and we don't know how successful it'll be. Well, at least we know that it sold well on Blu-ray, it trended all the time, it's had loads, like, it probably wouldn't get you $1 billion, but it would probably get you something. It probably, it's like, there's no reason to not try it when there's a fan base that wants it, at least even if it's a small one, versus a non-existent one where there's no interest in what you're trying to make. Yeah, anyway, I've gone off point. Point is, it's a good film. It's a shame DC, it's a shame Warner Brothers can't just, someone else can't just own DC and do something and like kind of turn it around and see what's staring in the face with it. Um, but yeah, it's great. And the soundtrack again was really really good. It was really nice. And Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn was fantastic as well. I honestly think that this is my favourite Harley Quinn performance that she's given so far in, what is it, just 3 films she's done in? Yeah, it's only Suicide Squad, Birds of Prey and this. She seemed like James Gunn worked really well with her, got to the heart of that character, and didn't kind of softball the character either. Like, he was fully aware of how messed up she was. She does some really messed up, twisted things, but she is obviously fun and charming in other ways. Again, it's not for everyone. I think how tough you went with the violence with Harley, like he really went into violence more so than we've ever seen her do in any of the other films. Like because in the first Suicide Squad, she's got a baseball bat, but you never see any blood or anything. And she's killing like CGI rendered things. You don't really feel like she's that threatening. Birds of Prey, I need to watch it again, but not a lot, you know. And she's sort of a hero, but in this one, she really does a lot of bloodletting, a lot of killing, and it's really very true to who she is. My opinion, it's a brilliant rendition of her. But for some people who've got a sort of rosy idea of who she is, the character, like she's an anti-hero, she is a villain, and I like the fact that he leans into the fact she's a villain. Whilst making her likable, that's a very, again, another ballsy move. Not to sort of dumb the character down and make her like a moral conscience kind of thing. Like he really didn't do that with her. Again, moral conscience would be the Ratcatcher character, which again was a great move, making it an unknown character who's sort of the heart and soul, like really lovable, likable character, the one actual real likable one. Because that's the other problem you have with a Suicide Squad type film is you need someone there you can root for. You need someone in some situation where you're like, they're all bad guys, but this bad guy I'm like over this bad guy because you kind of understand, like with Bloodsport, you kind of understand his how messed up he is and why he is, and the same thing with Ratcatcher. So there was a good core group. It's just weird that, like I keep saying, this thing with Peacemaker was they're pushing so hard for it because he was not one of the characters that you cared about. It was not one of the characters that I was like, well, I want to see him make it out alive. I was like, I really wanted him to get killed. I was like, I actually do because he's a dick. He's an entertaining dick, but he's a dick at the end of the day. But yeah, it'll be I'll be interested to see though how good this film is on a rewatch. Because as much as I loved it, it may be one that fades over time because an awful lot of its impact or its appeal based on the fact that you haven't seen it before. It's based on the fact you don't know exactly what's happening. I don't know if on a rewatch it would be as strong or work as well. Knowing like who lives and who doesn't, knowing when certain big moments are going to happen. I'm not sure about that, but that time will tell whether that's the case. But I would wager that because the film has got enough stuff going for it in different areas, it would still be a good film, but maybe not as good as I just felt like it was this time. Anyway, overall, I really, really loved it. Great to see James Gunn's vision properly realised. I just wish we could get the A cut of the first Suicide Squad now because it's just something that I think, we want to see. You want to see what his version was of it. I want to see it, I'm sure loads of people do. And again, another weird thing because it's not like they have to do anything. The film's shot. It's all sat there in fucking David Ayer's edit suite at his home. He's watched it. He knows it's a complete film, and they're not releasing it. It just is mind-boggling that they wouldn't do that when they need stuff on HBO Max. I mean, I would have released the A cut of Suicide Squad on HBO Max at the same time as the theatrical version of Suicide Squad's out, but keep the new Suicide Squad off HBO Max till October, November time, and then put it on in time for Christmas or something, and then you kind of have, people on HBO Max have got a great thing because they've got the David Ayer version there, and it's getting the Suicide Squad, you watch the David Ayer version, you then go to the cinema and watch the new one, get more people in the cinema to watch it, but the way they've done it is again, another bizarre thing. Anyway, let's stop talking about that because that's not really the point. The point of it is to review the film, positives, negatives. I think I've covered everything that was mainly positive, everything that was mainly negative. Like I say, beautifully shot. I definitely had really good music, really, emotional. But I don't know if, again, I'd have to see the David Ayer proper version. I feel that I might prefer that to this a little bit if I got to see it. But obviously as it stands, this is a far superior film to the first Suicide Squad. And yeah, it's like I say, I like the fact it's sort of self-contained. Like you don't need any more. I don't watch this and feel like I want to see another Suicide Squad because the first Suicide Squad really one of the reasons I liked it as much as I did, despite its issues, was it sort of felt like it was opening up the DC universe. Like there were so many things and little ideas in it. I was like, like the fact that you brought in all these villains means, and they brought in, they had little bits of Ben Affleck's Batman. I was like, this is great because you can have Deadshot in a Batman film. You can have Harley Quinn shot in a Batman film. And I was thinking like, Killer Croc as well. Like I was thinking, years down the line, how this stuff would be cool because you've introduced it here. But because none of that happened, the DCU sort of strangled itself before it even got to there. The first Suicide Squad's just forever going to be kind of a what if, like Jared Leto Joker. Like what could he have been? Like he wasn't well received, but that version, as they say, was a mangled up weird version. Who knows what people might have thought of him if we saw the original version David Ayer had. I mean, he said that Jared Leto's substantially better in it. It's like an amazing performance in his version of it. And so, that Jared Leto Joker is never going to be a fully formed, in my mind, exploration of that character because it just got snubbed out before they even had a chance to really even put him in a Batman film. Like put him against Batman, put him against Ben Affleck, see what it's like. I mean, it might have been shit, but I would like to have seen it. Never going to see it now. And it's just, the first Suicide Squad's always a bit tainted now because it's like, it's not even like what happened with Batman v Superman Justice League. At least you've had now the Zack Snyder's Justice League to kind of, hasn't completed the story, but it's made things better. The first Suicide Squad's always going to feel a bit like a missed opportunity, for me, like an opportunity that never got fully realised. So it's a shame. Whereas this one, because everything's sort of, the DCU is just sort of gone in, it's disintegrated kind of thing. This one, I'm like, I don't get to the end of it and go, well, I need a third one. I don't need any more. I'm happy for this just to be the end of Suicide Squad, because I don't know where else you can really take it. If you're not going to use it as a building block to make a connected universe, I don't know why you'd really do one. I mean, another one after this, because it would just be more of the same, I think. I'm sure that's what it wanted, was to turn it into a franchise where you do more of the same, but then it's like, you can always bring in a brand new cast of characters each time. But again, I think that's a more difficult thing for us to get invested in. They get invested in the same character. That's one reason why Marvel hardly kills their characters off. So to the same extent that it's cool they killed so many off in this one, if it did a third one, it would have the same problem where it's like, you bring in a whole load of new unknown characters that no one knows about. How well will that work without just doing what you did here again? So yeah, I don't feel like it's leaving it open for any sequels. I don't really feel like you need any sequels to this particular film. I even think if this is the last time we see Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, that's fine. Because again, as I keep saying, the DC universe is just disintegrated now. It's nothing. So it's a real shame in one way, because I would have liked to have seen the Zack Snyder stuff continue, but even without him at the helm, this is the other thing is that people massively don't get is when people are saying restore the Snyderverse, they're not saying get Zack Snyder back to direct it. They're saying the Snyderverse, i.e. the roadmap he was following for Justice League 2 and 3, use that. That's what most people are trying to say, restore the Snyderverse. There's understanding, at least in some courts, that he couldn't come back and direct it. He's doing other things, he's working at Netflix, we get it. If he could produce it, that'd be great. But what my take on it is, Zack Snyder set in stone a really good 3-arc Justice League that would have been some of the most epic stuff that you could have seen, and you're not going to follow that roadmap. You're just going to truck it away for nothing, and that just is annoying because, like, again, the hardcore fans would want to see it, and I'm sure if the hardcore fans would want to see it, the other people who weren't hardcore fans would eventually gravitate to it too, and you get the ball rolling and get a big DCU will be back on track again, and then you could do your spin-offs and multiverse and things. But like rushing straight to multiverse when you haven't even got your original universe sorted out is weird. It's another thing where I think you're just leaving your audience behind. Like I think this Flash movie is going to leave your audience behind because it's already rammed full of different characters and different things. And like Michael Keaton's Batman, well, no one knows who. Younger kids won't even know who he was. And then Ben Affleck's Batman's not really been around for ages. So that's going to be weird. And then it's like, well, what about it just being a Flash solo film focusing on him? He's going to get lost in the shuffle. So I think it'd be another just confusing film that the audiences won't know how to take. They won't know what it is. They won't know whether to care or why to care about it or what it's doing. I just think it'll also bomb. Anyway, we'll wait and see. Although this one was really good, and I hope all DC films continue to be good because the films themselves I like. It taken as their own thing. I just wish that they were more connected, and I just wish that they were following what is the natural thing to do. My opinion as a DC fan, I want to see instead of like, because they could do both and then not at the time screwing over the efforts of all these people. I mean, this is if your goal is just to make money, right? If your goal is just to make great films, and they're doing okay, but your goal is to make money, and you're not making money because you're not understanding basics about what fans want to see and what they don't, and audiences and stuff. But anyway, I'll stop this now. I will stop talking about Suicide Squad, but it is really a good film. I really enjoyed it.